It's the Detroit Garden Center presenting their Winter Seminar 2021. I'm Janet Macunovich, taking you through visualizing change in the garden and landscape. And this is chapter 3. I want to convert the vision to reality. The outline that I'm going to be showing you is in at gardenataz.org in conference materials in our webinars section. So you got to find things that fit what you're doing. There's so many resources that can fill this vision that so far you've just been broadly describing. John worked for us while he was in college. Debbie was my office manager at the time, and we're talking about what John's thinking about doing, and he's thinking, I want a Japanese maple there. And I said, well, the problem is that Japanese maple might not be the best plant there. What are you thinking about? He says, well, round and something that's got red tones to it. I said, well, redbud is round, and in the springtime has red tones to it, and there is a red leaf variety. It's really the same shape and gives you some of the same colors as Japanese maple. So does arrowwood viburnum if we only need about 10 feet or so, 10 or 12 feet. That's arrowwood viburnum, that's one arrowwood viburnum. If we don't have to have the round, we can do something like one of the, this is a linden. It's a golden form of a linden. Oops, sorry. Or if you want a spreading shape, you can use a weeping ginkgo. It's called a weeping ginkgo. They don't weep pendulous, they weep wide. So you might talk to other people, because that's what John was doing with Debbie and me, saying, "What I'm looking for something that looks like this." So you might talk to other people and give them your vision. Tell them what it is that you're looking for in terms of shape and size and colors that you're looking for. If you can't find a plant, maybe you've lost track of some of the descriptive words that you started out with. And you need to go back to saying, what was it? Well, let me see, I wanted to put something there, and I wanted the top to be broad. And that could be a Sargent crabapple. That's one Sargent crabapple. They're maybe only 8 feet tall, but they're often 16 to 20 feet wide. So, well, no, maybe a little too big. But how about a tree-form panicle hydrangea that we can cut back? Cut it out of a book, put it there, that could work. And it works for perennials too, gray foliage, fine texture. Go back to the descriptive words that you found when you fuzzed out your focus in the first place and said it had to be something that was gray, or it had to be something that was coarse, or it had to be something that was fine and low to fill that area. And take that to other people and ask them about it. When we planted this landscape to start with, Greg, Barbara is the gardener, Greg is the non-garden team member. And he kept asking why we planted the Japanese maple so far out from the house. I said, it's not far out from the house. We've already seen how big it's going to be. We've put the Japanese maple picture. We know how that in your time, it's going to look like that. And it's not far from the house. If it was any closer to the house, it would be wrong and you'd have to take it out. This was only, this was 15 years. So we're looking at the basics that we thought about when we put our thumbs out there to say, how big does it have to be? We're looking at the basics of what other colors do we have. We have an apple orchard in the background, so we don't want anything apple green colored. Those are the kinds of things that we're talking about. Didn't take long. And if you can work from real life, you're better off. If you can go to botanical gardens, this is at Hidden Lakes Botanical Gardens conifer collection again, and you're looking at 2 gold mop false cypress. These are billed as dwarf false cypresses, and this was let me see, about 10 years later, here they are. Now the rock did not change size. The rock is the same, and those are growing. So if you went and saw them in real life, you have a better chance of saying how big is something that I have to put in, and is it going to be during my tenure that it gets overly big? Do I have to prune it? What do I have to work on? Because they're getting bigger yet. There they are. This is another 10 years. Oops, sorry. So you see 10 and 20, sorry, and 20. And yet we're still planting more of them because we like them. We gardeners do that. I have found that if on Google, this is an older version of Google, but it works the same way now. If you put in what you're looking for, evergreen, columnar, zone 5, fine, texture, you'll get suggestions. You get Morton Arboretum's description of the boxwood called Glencoe, for instance. This one's zone 7 and 8, and they were picking up a different zone 5 than what I was looking for. Wavecrest has some suggestions for you. So if you keep your descriptive terms in mind and use the power that we've got in these things, you'll be able to find some things, some suggestions, especially if you click images. So these are all answers to that evergreen fine texture zones 5 to 7. Weeping, 10 feet, June bloom, zone 4. Put in your descriptive terms. That's the things that go into catalogs and go into plant encyclopedias and go into online magazine articles. And when you click pictures, you get even more of that kind of stuff. So you click pictures and go, oh, okay, here's some things. Someone asked about something, asking about putting a yew in the shade. No, not a yew, a pyramidal arborvitae in the shade. I wouldn't put a pyramidal arborvitae in the shade. They just are not happy plants in the shade. But this is one of the de Groot spire yews. They're quite narrow. There's also an inkberry called sky pencil. There we go, sky pencil holly. And you might not have known that those existed, and you didn't go out to a botanical garden to see it. But here you've got something that's telling you, here's what you can use. And they do grow. Some of these things you have to buy little. We're looking right now, Steve's probably still looking through the catalog, the online catalogs, for a Lindera that is reliably male or female, because we need one to pollinate and get the fruit. Didn't even realize that we did before. We might have to go out in real life, and when they're blooming, go out in the woods, find one that's male or female. The males have pollen, the females don't have pollen, and get one that is the one that we need. Take a cutting, and it'll be little, like these are. This is Cephalotaxis. It's called plum yew. They look a lot like yews, but it's a slightly coarser needle, and we had to get them real little because that's the way they come. But I put them in, and you see these guys right here? This is not quite 3 years later, and now they've almost covered that area, but I haven't got a picture of it because I never remember to take some of these pictures. They do grow, so you can put them out there and get them that way. Now, non-plant features are the same way. It's columnar if it's an arbor, just like a grass might be columnar, or a columnar plant might be columnar. A rock can be round, just like a perennial can be round, or a tree can be round. And paths have shapes and textures and color. So remember that it might be that you're trying to think of a plant, of a non-plant, to fit into your picture. Even water features have shapes and size and textures, and sculptures have a lot of shape and size and texture. It's white, okay, white works. It's a zigzag on the fencing. And no matter what it is that we're deciding to put in, when I'm visualizing it, I try real hard to think about whether it will thrive or last. I'm not going to put a wooden bench out with its wooden legs on moist soil because it's just going to rot. I'm going to have to put something there that it sits on that is not going to get wet in the wintertime, or else it's not going to last. When we make our arbors out of wood that we take down in the woods, they're attached to a metal foundation pipe that's put in the ground because we want them to last. Will it last? Do I have the experience to take care of it? Then if I answer yes to those, can I afford it? And does it do what I wanted? Does it fulfill the purpose that my visualization asked it to do? Then I make the change. Then you say, okay, I don't need a zigzaggy walk. There's no reason for a zigzaggy walk, and we're changing the front porch. So let's make a straight walk and move the plants out away from the house. Away from the house. Nothing worse than having to scrunch between a house and a plant in order to just spend your time cutting it. So move them out. Those are, there are 2 Varder Valley boxwoods, but for the most part, that's hellebores along that walkway there. That's good enough evergreen to have. And oak leaf hydrangea, which can be cut every time it gets too big. And you can always leave things. So you can always make a space. So this is all being smothered, but I know what's going to be there. I know that that's the peony area, and the peonies are going to come in there. I still smile. I always do when I think of our patio at our old house. When we put this patio in, it was years before we could afford the stone and the time to lay the patio. And when we did lay the patio, we were sitting at the table here. And Steve looked around and he said, "This is so cool." He says, "It's like this patio was always here." I said, "It was always here. I drew the beds all around it. Now it's just white and coarse in texture." I'm glad that you think it looks right there. So we changed the porch and the entranceway at Sue's house and designed that garden that I talked to you about later to eventually replace the foliage from these trees and to make it so that she could sit on the bench and see people walking by, say hi as they got to the open area, but not have to feel like she was being looked at by everybody walking by. So see, now the things have grown up. These are 9 barks. This is the yellowwood tree. It will someday be big enough that we won't miss this tree. And due to the construction on the house, those builders are not nice at all, the trees. No matter how hard we tried to get them not to stack things on the roots of this sugar maple, they did, and the sugar maple didn't make it. So sugar maple's gone, new trees in its place, because that should be a shady area to sit. So we said, we've got these 2 decrepit trees out there. Let's put something around them and replace the tree canopy with a new tree canopy. Here's Jean's memorial spruce, which started as just a little tiny thing in a pot to someday replace this spruce, and then this yellow wood to replace this multi-trunked spruce. If you can't erase, then do that. You say, okay, because we can't take them down, but we can just view them as fixtures and work around them. Leave them in there, get them out of the way, gradually replace them. Dogwoods, hydrangeas, magnolias, hydrangea, dogwood, magnolia, all to replace that tree. Makes it a lot easier to take it down in the someday. And we're getting close to the someday and the 4-year mark here. And it's never going to stop changing. Not if you're a gardener. Gardeners like to plant things differently. So we moved things out, planted things in there. Eventually they get to where, okay, we're starting to get over full here and too many things running around. And we want to make a change from just ground cover out here because the back's gotten too shady and we want to garden. So now that's become a garden out front. And probably one day it'll change again. Right now, looking at what it is now, the garden there and the tree, I think you see what I'm seeing, which is it's time. I think it's almost the 3rd year since we pruned that Japanese maple. It's time to prune the Japanese maple back down again. So you'll be ready in the spring to say, okay, I want a path there. Drag the path, make sure your line looks like you want it to look. You don't even have to worry about scale. You just say, I need to make sure that the path goes far enough back that it can disappear around the corner. And then I can put 2 bright colored items as focal points here and here. The same way that we put focal points here and over here. So I probably have run a little bit over time. Oh dear, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to run over time. What questions are there?
Any idea how long it takes from start to finish this whole process for newbies or designing something? I think you just answered some of that with these last few slides.
Yeah, it can actually take very little time to come up with a concept. It might take me 15 minutes to look and say, I think I see something here, but then to work out the details takes longer than that. We moved into the house that we're in right now 4 years ago. And immediately when we moved in, we looked around and said, okay, well, that's got to go and that's got to go. The first winter, we drew out lines and agreed on, well, actually it was late in the fall, we agreed on lines that we would want to see in the front yard. And we're still working out now what goes. We came up with a framework that said we'll have this shrub here and this tree there. We're still working out the details of what else goes in there. We could have sat down and done it all at once. And to do a design all at once like that, sometimes it takes me 2 full days, so maybe 16 hours of just sitting and making myself sit, draw out the concept of what I wanted to do, some mounds here, some pyramidal stuff there, and then starting to put first the focal points in, figuring out what they are, figuring out what goes around them, moving to the next focal point and figuring out what goes around them. And even then I might change that as we plant it, like we did at the zoo where we moved our flags around. But to do a whole front yard or a whole backyard might take you a solid weekend of work with paper, pencil, and books, or an encyclopedia online to find the plants that fit the look that you're looking for.
That's all we have. I'd like to thank Janet. It was a great seminar today. And isn't it nice? No one had to get out and drive in the cold.
Yeah, and it would have been a cold day to drive
Very
down.
cold, yes. Now,
I'm very glad to have been asked to do this again. Thank you, Ron. And
oh, yeah.
I did record the presentation, so I'll be able to put it up with a link on our site. I'm not sure, do you want to have a link?
Yeah, we'll put it on the Garden Center website also.
Okay, so as soon as I get the recording up, I'll make sure that link gets over to you, and anyone who wants to see this can see this. If it was useful to you, then tell some other people about it and tell them that they can come to Garden Center, DetroitGardenCenter.org or GardenAZ.org for other ideas and resources. But that's all for chapter 3, and so that means that's it for visualizing change. Remember us, GardenAZ.org and DetroitGardenCenter.org.
And make sure you check out Janet's classes on Saturday morning from 8:30 to 10. And she did a class before this morning. And the Detroit Garden Center has 2 more webinars coming up. One March 13th is on rain gardens. And it's Cindy Ross from Friends of the Rouge will be talking about that. And she has some really relevant information about runoff water and running into sewers and things like that, how important it is and the issues that the state is having with that presently.
And
And
that's
then on April 10th, we're going to have a presentation at the Udolph Garden in Belle Isle. We're going to talk about the beginnings and the planting, the whole process and the planning, which is fascinating. So that will be on our website, and I will also send an email to everyone who had registered for this class today. So from sunny Tucson, Arizona, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. And Janet, especially thank you for all you do for us at the Garden Center.
Thank you, Ron. Bye now, everybody. Have a great weekend. Stay safe.
Everyone have a great weekend.